Brother Xianxia and sister-in-law, don't worry. I'll save you immediately. Diva Blackrock had 2 horns atop his head and was a minotaur diva. He and Xianxia were lifelong friends, and Blackrock was much stronger than Xianxia. He might even be able to enter the ranks of the Supreme Divas soon. Back then, Xianxia had even given that top spiritual item for Diva Blackrock's use. It was what allowed Diva Blackrock to reach his current level. Diva Blackrock had long regarded Xianxia as a lifelong friend. How could he just watch Tianhu and the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva injure Xianxia? Shameless boasting. How can the array I set up be broken by a mere minotaur diva like you? The sinister voice of the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva echoed in the void. Although he did not expect Diva Blackrock to rush over, Diva Blackrock was probably the reason Xianxia still had a trace of hope in his heart, and stubbornly refused to hand over the top spiritual item. Now, the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva was about to completely destroy the hope in Xianxia's heart. At that time, he would naturally be able to obtain that top spiritual item. Gore! Diva Blackrock began to manifest his diva's true form. It was a huge minotaur whose entire body was pitch black and appeared infinitely tall. The horns on its head struck hard at the 9 revolutions ravaging array. Boom! The 9 revolutions ravaging array shook violently. Even the expression of the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva darkened, as if in disbelief. A crack had actually appeared in his 9 revolutions ravaging array. What powerful strength! This Diva Blackrock is almost at the level of a supreme diva. The 9 revolutions ravaging Diva was a little shocked. He knew the array he had set up the best. Even a peak title diva could forget about destroying the array from the outside. However, Diva Blackrock could actually tear apart the array. This was enough to prove that Diva Blackrock was not just a peak title diva, but was about to break through and become a supreme diva. Even the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva had to pay 120% attention to such a diva. In the past, the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva definitely would not fight such a peak title diva head-on. He was ultimately very cautious. He would fight if he could, and definitely would not risk his life. However, for the sake of that top spiritual item, the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva had no choice but to risk his life now. Diva Blackrock, didn't you want to save Diva Xianxia? Then come in too. The 9 revolutions ravaging Diva gritted his teeth and shouted. Immediately, his array expanded rapidly, and some of the damage from before quickly recovered. Moreover, it enveloped Diva Blackrock directly. Swoosh! Diva Blackrock did not refuse. He even proactively entered the array, because he could already see that Diva Xianxia was about to collapse and was severely injured. Get lost! Diva Blackrock flew to Xianxia's side at once, and casually delivered a smack to Tianhu. Bang! Tianhu felt as if he had suffered a heavy blow. He stared intently at Diva Blackrock and said in a trembling voice, Diva Blackrock, you weren't even this strong the last time. You! Tianhu had no idea how fast Diva Blackrock had improved. He thought that Diva Blackrock's strength remained the same as their last encounter, and they were about equal. But now, Diva Blackrock was already completely above him. 9 revolutions ravaging Diva, what are you doing? Stop Diva Blackrock quickly. Tianhu was simply shocked and furious. That strike from Diva Blackrock just now had actually severely injured him. Fool! The 9 revolutions ravaging Diva ignored Tianhu's cries. Instead, his expression was solemn as he began to activate the array. Second revolution. As the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva activated the second revolution of the array, gusts of astral wind immediately appeared in the array. This astral wind seemed capable of destroying everything. Wherever the astral wind passed, everything was reduced to ashes. Wanner! Xianxia hurriedly shielded his wife by his side. Even if he was injured, he was still a peak title diva, while his wife was only an ordinary diva. Under such an array, she did not have much ability to resist at all. Even so, Wanner's entire body was still trembling. The pervasive astral wind could even completely kill a title diva, let alone an ordinary diva. Brother Blackrock, Wanner won't be able to hold out much longer, Xianxia said anxiously. Diva Blackrock's expression was solemn. He was confident in his strength, and did not take ordinary titled divas seriously at all. However, the 9 Revolutions Ravaging Diva was an entity that could trap even supreme divas. Hence, even Diva Blackrock was very cautious. His diva's true form erupted with violent power in a frenzy, dissipating all these astral winds. He used no technique to break the array at all, and merely used brute force to destroy everything. Third Revolution. The 9 Revolutions Ravaging Diva shouted. Even he seemed to be struggling a little to control the array at this moment. At the third revolution of the 9 Revolutions Ravaging array, the power was simply earth-shattering. Even a peak-titled diva would not be able to withstand it, and might even be completely killed. It had to be known that even the 9 Revolutions Ravaging Diva could only hold out until the 5th revolution in this array. Even the 9 Revolutions Ravaging Diva could not activate it past the 5th revolution. He did not have that kind of strength yet. Only after becoming a Supreme Diva could one activate the array post the 5th revolution. The 5th revolution was a critical point. Back then, the 9 Revolutions Ravaging Diva relied on the 5th revolution of the array to slightly trap a Supreme Diva, and escape from that Supreme Diva. He attained the great reputation of the 9 Revolutions Ravaging Diva in a single feat. Hence, the power of the current 3rd revolution was already very terrifying. The invisible power of confinement was simply pervasive, inhibiting Diva Blackrock at every turn and frustrating him greatly. 90% of the array's power was focused on dealing with Diva Blackrock, but the remaining little amount still made Xianxia and his wife very uncomfortable. This was especially the case for his wife, Wanner. Faced with the suppression of the array, her situation was becoming more and more critical. If this continued, her life would probably be in danger. 4th Revolution. As the 4th revolution arrived, the power of the array became even more terrifying. Crunch. For the first time, Diva Blackrock was actually injured. It was as if there were infinite sabers and swords from all directions. They were invisible but extremely powerful. Moreover, in the array, this invisible power was not consumed at all. It was infinite and without end. No, the 9 Revolutions Ravaging array is too strong. I can still barely hold out for the 4th revolution, but if it enters the 5th revolution, I'll be in danger. Moreover, sister-in-law can no longer hold out in the 4th revolution. Diva Blackrock glanced at Wanner and Xianxia. The two of them were actually about to collapse. The attacks in the array were simply infinite and indiscriminate. If not for the fact that Diva Blackrock spared some attention to take care of Xianxia and Wanner, their lives would probably be in danger by the 3rd revolution. Lei, I can't hold out anymore. I'm sorry I couldn't let our child be born successfully. Brother Blackrock, please protect Lei's child no matter what. Wanner's face was pale. Her diva's body was already covered in injuries, and her life force was draining rapidly. She was clearly severely injured and on the verge of death. No, no! Xianxia roared madly. The progenitor's bloodline in his body was activated in a frenzy, as if he paid no heed to his life. He tried to transform into a sea of flames and break through the restraints of the array. However, no matter what he did, he could not stop the attacks of the array. The life force on Wanner's body became weaker and weaker, and she was already on the verge of death. Big brother, Brother Blackrock. Xianxia's face was filled with anxiety, and even his voice was a little hysterical. Unfortunately, even though Diva Blackrock attacked the array in a frenzy with all his might, he still could not break through this array. Xianxia was extremely anxious. He could only watch helplessly as the life force on his wife's body waned rapidly. Once the life force completely dissipated, she would be dead. Xianxia would never allow this to happen. Gore! Diva Blackrock also went berserk. He naturally knew Wanner's current situation, and he also knew that there was a small life form in Wanner's stomach, which was Xianxia's bloodline. After working hard for so long, Xianxia finally had a descendant. How could he allow the 9 Revolutions Ravaging Diva to kill him? Diva Blackrock blasted the 9 Revolutions Ravaging array wildly, blasting it again and again in a frenzy. The array shook violently, as if it would break at any moment. However, it recovered rapidly every time. Clearly, the 9 Revolutions Ravaging Diva was controlling the array. Even with Diva Blackrock's power, he could not destroy it. In fact, as time passed, even Diva Blackrock would be in danger. Wanner's aura became weaker and weaker. In the end, she was almost on the verge of death, and her entire body was severely injured. However, she grabbed Yanlei's hand tightly and said, "Lei, protect our child. Protect our child no matter what. No, you'll be fine. You and the baby will be fine." Yanlei clenched his fists tightly. He had never felt so powerless as he did now. Ever since he became a title diva, he had even lost his motivation for a time. He held great authority and could decide the lives of billions of living beings with a word. Without any threat, how could he have any motivation to cultivate? Perhaps this was also because he had not improved much over the years, and could not even compare to Tian who was in the Sky Prison Valley. Tian who, on the other hand, was full of motivation. He held a grudge and simply cultivated without regard for his life. Even though he had suffered all kinds of restrictions in the Sky Prison Valley, his cultivation level actually did not fall. In fact, his power became even stronger. Yanlei had never felt so regretful. He regretted not cultivating with all his might back then. If he could have become a supreme diva, he would not be as powerless as he was now. He could only watch his wife die, but there was nothing he could do. At this moment, Lin Feng, who was in his mother's body, frowned. He had always been in the mother's body. Originally, he had been focused on cultivating, hoping to break through directly to the level of a supreme diva before being born. Perhaps that would appear very abnormal, but establishing his reputation as an abnormal genius early on would be very beneficial to him when he entered the Kiliacosm core space in the future. Unfortunately, now that he saw the situation outside, neither Yanlei nor Diva Blackrock seemed to be able to stop the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva. Looks like I can only be born in advance. Lin Feng took a deep breath, and there was also a trace of anger in his heart. He had been cultivating smoothly, and everything was going according to plan. Originally, he would have been able to complete the breakthrough in his mother's body in another few hundred years. Unfortunately, everything had been destroyed by the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva and Tian who now. They had destroyed the plan of the supreme Kiliacosm sovereign. How could Lin Feng not be furious? When a Kiliacosm sovereign was angered, even in the medium Kiliacosm, it would shake the entire medium Kiliacosm and shake countless small Kiliacosms. "Let me be born." Lin Feng suddenly transmitted a stream of pure energy and fed it back to his mother's body. Then, the life force of his mother, Wanner, rose rapidly. Wanner had a vague premonition. "Lei, I'm afraid our child is about to be born." Yanlei saw that his wife seemed to have recovered when on the verge of death. Her life force was rising steadily, and finally it gradually stabilized. Moreover, that kindred aura of life in his wife's body was also rising wildly. On top of it, the fluctuations of her life were incomparably intense, causing Yanlei to have some guesses. Is our child about to be born? That's right, it's our child. Just now, a pure energy was infused into my body. It must be our child. They know about our situation and saved my life. The child knows about our situation? Yanlei was both surprised and happy, but at the same time, he felt a trace of worry. Could there be such a life form? It could save his mother before it was even born. However, now was not the time for Yanlei to question and pursue the matter. What he needed to do now was to protect his wife and his soon-to-be-born child. Boom! Dark clouds appeared in the void, and an oppressive aura even filled the void. Terrifying energy formed an energy vortex that condensed in the void, growing more and more solid and terrifying. Even the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva and Diva Blackrock felt a trace of threat. What's going on? What a terrifying energy! What is creating such a terrifying vortex of energy? Who exactly is it? I sensed a new aura. It seems to have triggered natural phenomena. The 9 revolutions ravaging Diva and Tian who were both a little bewildered. Such a terrifying vortex of energy made even them feel threatened. In particular, they were uneasy. They had a vague premonition that something major was happening. Could it be that the child in sister-in-law's stomach is about to be born? Diva Blackrock naturally sensed this oppressive aura as well. In particular, he had heard that the children of Yanlei and Wanner had some miraculous aspects. Up until now, she had been pregnant for hundreds of years, and they had yet to be born. Originally, Diva Blackrock did not pay much attention to it. After all, there were always some miraculous things about the Diva's bloodlines. Being pregnant for hundreds of years, and even more miraculous things were not unheard of. However, he did not expect this to be so miraculous. In particular, the source of that aura of life was really Wanner, or rather Wanner's stomach. It's a pity that they're born at the wrong time. The array of the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva is really powerful. I'm unable to break it. Diva Blackrock shook his head repeatedly. He now believed that Yanlei's bloodline must be extraordinary. In fact, the progenitor's bloodline was abnormally rich. Their future achievements would be limitless, and it was not impossible for them to even become a supreme diva. However, being born at this moment was tantamount to being a lamb in the lion's den. They would probably be killed by the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva as soon as they were born, and he would be powerless to stop it. They were indeed born at an inopportune time. At this moment, the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva and Tian, who also found the source of that unfamiliar aura of life. It was in the stomach of Yanlei's wife. It's Yanlei's child? Yanlei's child is indeed extraordinary. I heard that Yanlei has the bloodline of progenitor Yan? From the looks of it, it should be true. Only progenitor's bloodline can be so miraculous. Heh, so what if it's miraculous? Being born at this moment means certain death. That's just as well. I really want to see Yanlei in so much agony that he'd rather die. How painful would it be to see his wife and child die in front of him with his own eyes? Ha ha ha. Tian Hu laughed maniacally instead. Boom. In the next moment, a new aura of life erupted forcefully, bright as the dazzling sun. It erupted all of a sudden, and instantly swept in all directions. Right on the heels of that, a figure that appeared to be a baby stretched across the void. Lin Feng had been born. Boom. It was as if the entire array was shaking. A fair and chubby baby stood in the void with his eyes closed the entire time. He's born. Yanlei's voice was trembling. That was his child. He did not even know if it was a boy or a girl. My child. On the other hand, Wanner's maternal instinct was evoked. Her eyes were filled with tears as she looked at the figure in the void. She wished she could hug him immediately. Wanner, don't be anxious. Our child seems to be a little extraordinary. Although Yanlei was also very nervous and even excited, he held on to Wanner tightly. As a title diva, he sensed that something was amiss immediately. His child was born without crying at all. Even his physique was a little abnormal. At this moment, even Diva Blackrock stopped attacking the array. Instead, he came to Yanlei and Wanner's side, protecting them, but staring cautiously at the figure in the void. Heh, he's indeed extraordinary. He's born miraculous, and when he was born, strange natural phenomena appeared. It's enough to prove that this child will definitely be extraordinary in the future. Unfortunately, he's born at the wrong time in my 9 revolutions ravaging array. He's about to reincarnate as soon as he's born. How pitiful. As soon as he finished speaking, the 9 revolutions ravaging diva condensed a huge palm immediately and grabbed towards the newborn baby. Yanlei, if you don't want your child to die now, hand over that top spiritual item. The words of the 9 revolutions ravaging diva echoed in everyone's ears. Brother Blackrock, save my child. When Wanner saw that the 9 revolutions ravaging diva was about to capture her child, she already turned pale with fear. No one was more concerned about her child than she. Gore! Diva Blackrock roared. Without needing Wanner to call for help, he had already attacked brazenly. However, in the 9 revolutions ravaging array, everything was controlled by the 9 revolutions ravaging diva. He only needed to let the array hinder Diva Blackrock slightly. Diva Blackrock was already too late. He could not reach it at all and could not protect the baby before the 9 revolutions ravaging diva reached him. Just as the huge palm was about to grab Lin Feng, the baby suddenly opened his eyes. Swoosh! This fair, fat, and cute-looking baby opened his eyes. A divine light flashed across his eyes. It was this divine light that made even the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva tremble, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. It was not just the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva. Tianhu, Diva Blackrock, Diva Yanlei, and so on were also shocked once they saw the divine light in the baby's eyes. It was as if they were not facing a baby, but a terrifying progenitor. That's right, it was like the aura of a progenitor. That was bloodline, the power of the progenitor's bloodline. You deserve to die. Lin Feng suddenly spoke. He had long learned the language of this world in his mother's body. Hence, everyone heard his words clearly. Even the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva was slightly stunned. Did our child just speak? A newborn baby is talking? Even though they already knew how miraculous Lin Feng was. When they saw Lin Feng speak as soon as he was born, neither Wanner nor Yanlei seemed to be able to accept it. They were very shocked. However, although Lin Feng speaking was indeed very shocking, and this miraculous aspect was not the bloodline of an ordinary diva, the palm of the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva still did not stop at all. Instead, it continued to fall. Boom! This time, the palm did not land. Everyone's eyes widened in disbelief. They saw Lin Feng wave his fair and chubby little hands, wrap his arms around himself, and press down hard. Bang! There was a sound like heartbeats. The large mass of pure energy in the void poured down in a frenzy like a galaxy descending from the heavens, landing hard into the 9 revolutions ravaging array and impacting it violently. No! The 9 revolutions ravaging Diva roared. He was very terrified. Unfortunately, the energy surged through the 9 revolutions ravaging array and broke through it in an instant. At the same time, the terrifying energy directly shattered the palm of the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva. Absorb! Lin Feng opened his small mouth and sucked hard. Immediately, a large amount of energy was sucked into Lin Feng's mouth. Buzz! Lin Feng's body seemed to be expanding. In the blink of an eye, it had expanded visibly. This was not actual expansion, but growth. That's right, growth. Lin Feng had used the power of spacetime. Even though it was only his soul, and a small portion of it at that, comprehending the mystery of spacetime meant that it was a power that would always belong to Lin Feng himself. Even a portion of the soul could mobilize the power of spacetime. Right now, Lin Feng was accelerating the growth of his newborn body. It was as if years had passed at once. Lin Feng's body was expanding wildly. As long as he could withstand the acceleration of spacetime, he could keep accelerating. Of course, the weaker Lin Feng's body was, the easier it was to accelerate. With Lin Feng's soul, he could easily withstand it. However, as he continued to grow, the energy in his body rose steadily, from an ordinary titled diva to a peak titled diva. His aura even surpassed Diva Blackrock. How could this be? Tianhu looked at Lin Feng in a daze. He watched as the baby's body grew rapidly, his appearance changing to that of an adolescent. That was already an acceleration of over 100 years. And this was almost the limit. Normally, 100-year-old divas were still in their adolescence, and were considered very young. Stop! Lin Feng suddenly opened his eyes. Be it the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva, Tianhu, Yanlei, or Diva Blackrock, they were all captivated by Lin Feng's miraculous change, or rather, stunned. They were also incomparably shocked. However, at this moment, Lin Feng spoke again. As soon as he finished speaking stop, the aura on his body finally stopped growing. Peak titled Diva. This was the limit that Lin Feng could attain now. Even if he accelerated spacetime, even if he had the soul of a Kiliacosm sovereign, even if he had cultivated in his mother's body for hundreds of years, he could ultimately only reach the level of a peak-titled diva. If he wanted to break through, Lin Feng knew that he still lacked some foundation. If he were in the mother's body, he was confident that he could break through in hundreds of years. Unfortunately, he no longer had the chance to enter his mother's womb again. His plan was broken, and the culprits behind all of this were the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva and Tianhu. At this moment, Lin Feng's killing intent towards them was already incomparably intense. 9 revolutions ravaging Diva. You deserve to die. Lin Feng's voice was incomparably cold, practically bone-chilling. Even his gaze could make the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva's heart palpitate. Was this really a newborn baby? Even though Lin Feng had accelerated time to change from a baby to an adolescent, he still could not conceal the juvenile look on his face. For such a juvenile adolescent, however strong his bloodline was, what was the use? What nonsense! Even your father was almost killed by me. You're just a newborn brat. How dare you spout nonsense about killing me? The 9 revolutions ravaging Diva's expression was dark as he stared at Lin Feng. Although Lin Feng was a little miraculous, he actually did not take it to heart. He could sense that the aura on Lin Feng's body was still that of a titled diva. Although he had the strength of a titled diva as soon as he was born, and his aura had even soared just now, reaching that of a peak titled diva, the 9 revolutions ravaging diva was confident in himself. As long as it was a titled diva, he had nothing to fear. Among titled divas, the 9 revolutions ravaging diva could be considered almost invincible. Even if he was not invincible, he was still one of the top few titled divas. Hence, how could the 9 revolutions ravaging diva be afraid of Lin Feng? Lin Feng extended his fair and chubby little hand, and suddenly clenched his fist hard. Boom! It was as if the world was collapsing. The array of the 9 revolutions ravaging diva shook violently in an instant. It was covered in dense cracks, appearing ready to collapse at any moment. The 9 revolutions ravaging diva was shocked, and appeared to be in disbelief. How is this possible? You! Before he could finish speaking, Lin Feng threw another punch. The array shook violently and was on the verge of collapse. At this moment, the 9 revolutions ravaging diva couldn't care less. The aura on his entire body soared, and he shouted, "5th revolution!" Crack! As the 9 revolutions ravaging diva shouted, the entire array flashed. It was as if the power of the array had expanded by 10-fold at once. A confinement force instantly confined Lin Feng. If even Lin Feng was in such a state, Diva Blackrock, Yanlei and Wanner were even worse off. They could not even move. The 9 revolutions ravaging Diva's face was flushed. The 5th revolution was already his limit. There were still the 6th, 7th, and 8th revolutions, as well as the legendary 9th revolution. They could even kill the peak supreme divas. This was a supremely vicious array. However, with the current strength of the 9 revolutions ravaging diva, the 5th revolution was already the ultimate limit. Back then, he had relied on the 5th revolution to temporarily confine a supreme diva and escape. This was enough to show how formidable the 5th revolution of this array was. Ha! Lin Feng also felt the pressure. The power of the array at the 5th revolution could indeed confine the power of all titled divas. As long as one was a titled diva, there was ultimately a limit. Under the restrictions of the array, they would actually be unable to unleash their strength at all. However, Lin Feng was not a real titled diva. His soul belonged to that of a great Kiliacosm sovereign, a great and mighty Kiliacosm sovereign. Even if he did not bring any power into this small Kiliacosm, his realm was ultimately that of a Kiliacosm sovereign. Even if the rules of this small Kiliacosm were different, when his realm was high enough, Lin Feng could still use the rules of this small Kiliacosm slightly. In particular, he realized that there was a hidden bloodline in his body, which seemed to resonate with certain rules of this small Kiliacosm. Hence, he instantly unleashed this bloodline power. Boom! In the next moment, a scarlet light flashed through Lin Feng's body, which was originally fair and chubby like a giant infant. A scarlet color like plasma filled his entire body, and quickly condensed into a huge diva's true form. A diva's true form. This was a diva's true form. His exact face could not be seen, but his entire body emitted a terrifying aura. There was even a white flame permeating the void. Flames, white flames. There was actually a faint golden tint in the white flames, faintly discernible and inconsistent. Seeing this white fire that actually had a faint golden tint to it, Yanlei's eyes immediately widened in apparent disbelief. His entire body trembled with excitement. This is the fire of Genesis. Only the great progenitor, His Majesty Yen, can use the fire of Genesis. That's right, the bloodline. It must be the progenitor's bloodline. It's rumored that of descendants with the great progenitor's bloodline, those descendants with extremely pure bloodlines can stimulate the fire of Genesis. The true fire of Genesis is a mighty golden color. As for the white flames, they're slightly inferior, but those are flames that can only be stimulated by someone with the purest progenitor's bloodline. Xianxia was very excited. How could he not be? That was the fire of Genesis that he had dreamed of using. All the divas with the bloodline of Yen were proud of activating their ancestral bloodline and using the fire of Genesis. Moreover, the fire of Genesis was also the strongest fire in the world. It was known to incinerate everything. No matter what supreme treasure or array it was, they were all fragile as paper before the fire of Genesis. Only the power of the bloodlines of the other three progenitors could contend with it. Even Xianxia, who had become a peak-titled diva, did not have the ability to activate his ancestral bloodline and unleash the fire of Genesis. That had nothing to do with strength, but with the density of the bloodline. Clearly, the concentration of the progenitor's bloodline in Linfeng had already reached an astonishing level. It was probably second only to the direct first-generation descendant of progenitor Yen. Fire. Is this the fire of Genesis? Linfeng quietly sensed the flames on his body. He did not use the rules of spacetime because there was no need at all. The rules of spacetime transcended everything and were above all rules. Forget about the small kiliocosm. It would not be affected at all even in the medium kiliocosm. However, facing a 9 revolutions ravaging diva who was only a titled diva equivalent to a peak 1-star supremacy, was there a need to use the rules of spacetime to deal with him? When Linfeng was in his mother's body, he had actually already noticed that there was a recessive bloodline in his body. Originally, this recessive bloodline was deeply hidden, and the bloodline was very, very thin. However, he was a kiliocosm sovereign. By deliberately training in his mother's body, he actually gradually trained his bloodline to an incredible level. The cultivation system of this small kiliocosm relied very much on bloodlines. All divas did not compete in terms of cultivation techniques, supreme treasures, or arrays, but bloodlines. As long as the bloodline was powerful enough, it could even break all techniques, and the bloodlines of the 4 progenitors were the most revered. When Linfeng cultivated the density of his bloodline to an extremely high level, his bloodline legacy naturally appeared. It was an inherited memory that came directly from the bloodline. Hence, Linfeng also learned everything about the progenitor's bloodline and the fire of Genesis. The flames he had just activated were actually far from what could be considered the fire of Genesis. It only had a slim chance of becoming the fire of Genesis. Even so, even ordinary supreme divas would have to retreat from the brunt of such flames, let alone the 9 revolutions ravaging diva. Break! Linfeng clenched his fists tightly. The fire of Genesis condensed wildly. Then he aimed at the 9 revolutions ravaging diva, and smashed down hard with a fist. Boom! Under the blast of the fire of Genesis, the so-called ravaging array in its 5th revolution was torn apart instantly like paper. The 9 revolutions ravaging diva cried out in pain as he was directly enveloped by the fire of Genesis. In the blink of an eye, he was reduced to ashes. Thump! Linfeng flicked his finger again. Tian, whose eyes widened. A wisp of fire of Genesis entered his body and burned Tian Hu to ashes. All these were completed in a flash. Then, everything around them returned to calm. Is this really my son? Xianxia watched all of this with his mouth agape. The 9 revolutions ravaging diva that had made him despair had actually been annihilated in an instant. The enemy he had been entangled with for countless years, Tian Hu, had actually died to a wisp of flames. Up until now, he still could not quite believe the scene before him. There's no suppression at all. This body is completely a native life form of this small kiliocosm. Unfortunately, I couldn't wait until becoming a supreme diva before I was born. Linfeng did not seem to care about the deaths of the 9 revolutions ravaging diva and Tian Hu. He did not even look at them. He only looked up into the depths of the void. He vaguely sensed that the flame of Genesis just now seemed to have communicated with a certain space and a certain type of rules, which was why it possessed such powerful strength. In this world, bloodline was everything. To a certain extent, bloodline cultivation was the mainstream of small chiliocosm, and the manifestation of rules. Clearly, the fire of Genesis represented the supreme rules of fire. It was one of the strongest types of rules in this small chiliocosm, and represented infinite destructive power. Unfortunately, Lin Feng had yet to master the true fire of Genesis. He only had the potential to master the fire of Genesis. He could sense that he was still a little short. It was precisely because he was born in advance and was not born as a supreme diva. Otherwise, he would be favored by this world, and his cultivation would yield twice the results with half the effort. This was aptitude. It warranted favor from the providence of the world, and could easily allow him to become a peak supreme diva in the future. Unfortunately, all of this was destroyed by Tian Hu and the 9 revolutions ravaging diva. Although Lin Feng felt that it was a shame, he also knew that it was very difficult for everything to be perfect. Since he had already been born in advance, he had to make preparations early. Now, he had to face a realistic problem, and that was the Yen-Lei couple. His body was bestowed by the Yen-Lei couple. No matter how one looked at it, the Yen-Lei couple were Lin Feng's parents. At least, they were the parents that granted him this body, so Lin Feng had to face them. Swoosh! Lin Feng looked at Yen-Lei and his wife. He could tell that both of them were very nervous. The current Lin Feng still looked like an adolescent, but just now, he had casually killed the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva and Tian Hu. This made Yen-Lei and his wife feel a trace of joyous surprise, but also a trace of subtle worry. Father, mother, sorry for scaring you. Lin Feng took the initiative to fly over and spoke directly. Yen-Lei and his wife's eyes widened, appearing very surprised, but they did not know what to say. Anyone who gave birth directly to a giant baby, who grew up in the blink of an eye, would probably have very complicated emotions. Are you really our child? Yen-Lei was still a little uncertain. That's right, father, mother. My situation is a little complicated. When I was in mother's body, I could actually more or less sense what was happening outside. Later, I obtained the bloodline legacy in my mind, so I continued to cultivate in mother's body. Originally, I wouldn't have been born at this time, but father and mother were in danger, so I could only be born in advance. Lin Feng briefly explained his matter and found an impeccable reason: a bloodline legacy. The progenitor's bloodline had a legacy. If the bloodline was naturally rich, one would definitely obtain the legacy. With the legacy of the progenitor's bloodline, cultivation would practically be smooth sailing. With this reason, it did not seem impossible for Lin Feng to be so miraculous. My poor child. His mother could no longer care about anything else. She went forward and hugged Lin Feng. In her opinion, she was the one who had failed to protect Lin Feng and caused him to be born in advance. If he was not born in advance, Lin Feng might even have a chance to be born as a supreme diva. At that time, Lin Feng would be a genuine supreme diva. It would only be a matter of time before he became a peak supreme diva. Yen-Lei was also very surprised. He sized Lin Feng up and could sense a trace of intimacy in the bloodline in his body. This was his son. There was no doubt about it. Do you have a name? Yen-Lei pondered for a moment and asked. No. Father, please give me a name. Yen-Lei thought for a while and said in a low voice, It's because you were born in advance that you saved my and your mother's lives this time. This is all luck. You're the one who brought luck. In the future, you'll be called Yen Yun. Thank you for the name, father. I'll be Yen Yun in the future. Lin Feng grinned. It looked like an innocent smile, but in reality, Lin Feng was also rather helpless. He had gained 2 more family members just like that. However, this was something that he had to experience when his soul descended. If he had more parents, so be it. Lin Feng had used their son's body, so he had to bear this karma. At most, he would bring Yen-Lei and his wife to the medium chiliocosm in the end. In a sense, Yen-Lei and his wife were indeed Lin Feng's parents, genuine parents. Ha ha ha, brother Yen-Lei. Congratulations on getting a son. Yen Yun has the bloodline of the progenitor, and the concentration of his bloodline is so high. If he's nurtured well, it's not impossible for him to become a supreme diva in the future. I'll have to rely on Yuner in the future. Diva Blackrock also laughed aloud. He was genuinely happy for Xianlei. To be able to have the son who's such a top genius, a peak title diva at birth, and he had an extremely concentrated progenitor's bloodline too. Countless supreme divas had never encountered such a good thing, let alone a mere titled diva. In particular, Lin Feng had killed Tian Hu and the 9 Revolutions ravaging diva as soon as he was born. That was even more terrifying. It had to be known that Tian Hu was one thing. Diva Blackrock could also have killed him. However, the 9 Revolutions ravaging diva was a peak titled diva. He could even be considered invincible among titled divas. Even Diva Blackrock was not its match. Just the 4th revolution of the ravaging array was already somewhat unbearable for Diva Blackrock. However, such an invincible 9 revolution ravaging diva could not even withstand a single move from the Yen Yun. He was burned to ashes by the flames from Yen Yun's eruption of bloodline power. He was already so powerful at birth. How could he be ordinary in the future? By the way, Tian Hu left some things behind. Diva Blackrock waved his hand, and a pitch-black token engraved with some complicated patterns appeared. It looked vaguely strange and sinister. This is the Sky Prison token, unique to the divas imprisoned in the Sky Prison Valley. This is proof that Tian Hu is dead. In the future, when people from the Sky Prison Valley come, you can obtain some rewards with this token. Xianlei looked at the token. He also knew that Diva Warden was very furious at those divas who had escaped from the Sky Prison Valley. He had issued a huge bounty. All those who captured or killed these fugitives would obtain huge rewards. Haha! Tian Hu, oh Tian Hu, you've schemed all your life to deal with me. But who would have thought that you would die at the hands of my son? Ha ha ha, this is fate. It's fate. Xianlei was in high spirits and incomparably happy. He was not Tian Hu's match himself, nor could he deal with Tian Hu, but he was still very happy that his son could kill Tian Hu. Hence, Xianlei and his wife led Lin Feng and Diva Blackrock back to Xianlei City. They knew that this news could not be concealed at all. Many divas had witnessed this great battle. From today onwards, the name Yen Yun would probably spread throughout the progenitor world. In the current Xianlei City, everyone was talking about the miraculous son of the city lord Xianlei. Many people had witnessed it with their own eyes. As soon as Yen Yun was born, he killed 2 top-notch titled divas, the 9 Revolutions ravaging diva and Tian Hu in one fell swoop. This was simply mythical and legendary. Even the bloodline descendants of the supreme divas had never heard of something so overboard. Although there were also some who were born as titled divas, those occasions were far less shocking than Yen Yun's matter. This news gradually spread around the progenitor continent as many divas propagated it. Finally, it spread throughout the entire progenitor world. Almost everyone knew about it. In a secret chamber in the city lord's residence of Xianlei City, Xianlei and Diva Blackrock sat on the ground. There were layers of arrays here. It was where Xianlei usually cultivated in seclusion, and was very secretive. During this period of time, Xianlei's face had been flushed and he looked very happy. However, when they arrived at the secret chamber, the smile on Xianlei's face gradually faded, and his expression turned solemn. Brother Blackrock, tell me the truth. Do you feel that something is amiss about Yen Yun? Diva Blackrock glanced at Xianlei, then shook his head and said, Brother Xianlei, some mysteries are best left alone. It's not that I don't know about bloodline legacies, but how can a bloodline legacy grow to such an extent at once? Moreover, even if the bloodline legacy enables cultivation, combat experience can't be feigned. As soon as Yen Yun was born, that kind of practiced combat experience he showed when he overwhelmed his opponent forcefully with the fire of Genesis directly, this kind of control over battle is definitely not something that just an abnormally gifted genius can possess. I suspect that Yuner has really been possessed. Xianlei's tone was solemn. Possession and reincarnation and possession at that was not unheard of. However, reincarnating and possessing a body in such a high-profile manner was really unprecedented. In particular, the strength Lin Feng had displayed shocked them. So what if he's a supreme diva who has reincarnated? With Yen Yun's current strength, if he's really a supreme diva, he'll recover his strength soon. There's no need for him to conceal it from us at all. Moreover, so what if we know? From the looks of Yen Yun's personality, he feels that he owes you a favor. After all, your blood flows through his body. Diva Blackrock was very clear-headed. In reality, after Lin Feng's various actions after his early birth, he did not think Lin Feng was a so-called abnormal genius. There were indeed abnormal geniuses. There were even those who were supreme divas the moment they were born. They were direct descendants of the progenitors. However, combat experience, control over battle, and various abnormal phenomena clearly indicated that Lin Feng was not really an abnormal genius. It was very likely that he was an expert who had reincarnated and possessed someone. There was even a high chance that he was a supreme diva. As for a progenitor, he did not think any progenitor needed to reincarnate and possess someone. If it were those peak supreme divas, it was indeed possible. However, no matter which supreme diva Lin Feng was, it was meaningless to Yen Lei. The current Lin Feng was already no longer someone Yen Lei could deal with. Moreover, reincarnation possession was different from ordinary possession. There was an additional step of reincarnation, as the one they reincarnated into did not have any consciousness to begin with. After the possession, they would actually be no different from a true flesh and blood relation. The only difference might be that it was difficult to nurture feelings. After all, reincarnated possessors all had their own complete memories. However, no matter what, with the involvement of possessing the body, the relationship between the two would never be broken. We can only leave it for the time being. Moreover, it was because Yen Yun was born in advance that we were saved. Brother Blackrock, please pay more attention to which Supreme Diva has fallen. Perhaps you can find out his identity. All right, it can be considered answering one of your questions. Diva Blackrock nodded. Actually, he could understand Yen Lei's feelings very well. After so many years, Yen Lei finally had a son. Although his performance was very outstanding, it was just that he was too outstanding, putting Yen Lei at a loss. In particular, Lin Feng was very likely a powerful diva who had reincarnated and possessed another body. Psychologically, Yen Lei rejected it a little. However, what was done was done. This matter had already happened, and Yen Lei was powerless to change all of this. He could only accept it silently. Moreover, deep down, Yen Lei actually still held some hope that Lin Feng was not a reincarnated diva. Even though the possibility was minuscule, he still had some hope. In the other room, Lin Feng closed his eyes slightly. In reality, the entire Yen Lei city was under Lin Feng's detection. Any slight change could not escape his detection. This was the advantage of the realm. Although it was only a portion of the soul, he was a great and powerful Kiliacosm sovereign. A mere city was nothing. Ha! Lin Feng seemed to have sensed something, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. Interesting. They've discovered it? Seems like I've indeed underestimated the divas of this world too much. Lin Feng's gaze was profound. He naturally knew what Yen Lei and Diva Blackrock were talking about in the secret chamber. Lin Feng had thought he was very secretive, and didn't expect there to still be such a huge flaw. However, with Lin Feng's current strength, even if Yen Lei knew, there was nothing he could do. Lin Feng would not pay attention to such minor matters originally. Actually, at this point, whether Yen Lei discovered it or not, it would not affect Lin Feng at all. He needed to increase his strength quickly and break through to the realm of the Supreme Diva. Only by becoming a Supreme Diva could Lin Feng come into contact with the upper echelons and core of this world. Otherwise, Lin Feng would not even know how to search for the Kiliacosm core space. He was a Kiliacosm sovereign, but he was not omnipotent. In particular, the Kiliacosm core space was not something that could be found just by searching. However, Lin Feng could no longer find the possibility of continuing to improve in Yen Lei City. This world was a bloodline cultivation system. There was no way to enhance Lin Feng's bloodline in Yen Lei City. Just as Lin Feng was about to leave Yen Lei City, a few powerful auras suddenly appeared outside Yen Lei City. All of them were the auras of peak-titled divas. Swoosh! Lin Feng's figure flashed as he flew out of Yen Lei City. Yen Lei, Diva Blackrock, and the others also flew out of the city. When they saw Lin Feng, their gazes were a little complicated, but they quickly calmed down. Yuner, these people are divas from the Sky Prison Valley. Yanlei still introduced them to Lin Feng. Sky Prison Valley? Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He knew that the valley master of the Sky Prison Valley was Diva Warden, a supreme diva. Moreover, he was a rather powerful entity even among the supreme divas. Father invited them? No, they should be here for Tianhu. Lin Feng looked at the few titled divas of the Sky Prison Valley. He sensed a trace of faint hostility from these people. They were probably not here just for Tianhu. These visitors had ill intentions. Are you divas from the Sky Prison Valley? That's right. We're here on the orders of Diva Warden. There were a total of 7 people, all top-notch titled divas. Moreover, their faces were concealed by masks. However, the aura on their bodies was surging with killing intent. They were clearly not ordinary titled divas, but divas who specialized in killing. There was no knowing how much blood their hands had been stained with. This is the token of the Sky Prison Valley on Tianhu. Everyone, please take a look. Yanlei respectfully showed Tianhu's token to the 7 divas of the Sky Prison Valley. This was a token that belonged exclusively to the Sky Prison Valley. As expected, the 7 of them nodded and said, "That's right. This is Tianhu's token." With that, the 7 of them waved their hands, and Tianhu's token was reduced to dust, disappearing into the void. At this moment, both Yanlei and Diva Blackrock's expressions changed abruptly. What is the meaning of this? Tianhu is a wanted diva of the Sky Prison Valley. Since we killed him, we should receive a bounty from the Sky Prison Valley. Bounty? The diva in the mysterious mask sneered and said, "The 2 of you are dignified peak-titled divas at any rate. Don't you know what our Sky Prison Valley is? Which of the divas imprisoned in our Sky Prison Valley has committed unpardonable evil? All the imprisoned divas are those of interest to Diva Warden. They are divas with some special aspects for Diva Warden's study. This time, Diva Warden has instructed us to bring Diva Yenyun of the Yanlei City back to the Sky Prison Valley. Diva Yenyun of Yanlei City is innately miraculous and very valuable for research. We don't want to make a big deal out of it, so if you don't want Yanlei City to be destroyed and others to be implicated, it's better for Diva Yenyun to come with us." As soon as the divas of the Sky Prison Valley finished speaking, the expressions of Yanlei and Diva Blackrock changed abruptly. Only then did they remember. That's right. What was the Sky Prison Valley? It was actually a huge array set up by Diva Warden to provide for his own cultivation. Those who were captured were not truly heinous, but merely evoked the interest of Diva Warden. Diva Warden was someone who was a mix of both good and evil. Clearly, Lin Feng's performance had attracted the attention of Diva Warden. Now, he had even sent 7 top-notch titled divas to capture Lin Feng to the Sky Prison Valley. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Having finished speaking, the 7 peak titled divas surrounded Lin Feng, Yanlei, and Diva Blackrock. Moreover, they vaguely formed an array. With the power of the 7 of them, they formed a huge net that trapped Lin Feng and the others firmly. As soon as the 7 of them moved, Lin Feng knew that they were even more powerful than the 9 revolutions ravaging diva. If the 9 revolutions ravaging diva faced these 7 people, he would definitely be beaten to a pulp. This seemed to have the scent of a prison. Moreover, it did not just suppress the physical body of the diva, but also their mind and soul. This should be the Sky Prison technique. Diva Warden was adept at it. Using it as the foundation, he established the Sky Prison Valley. Over all these years, even supreme divas had been suppressed before. How dare you? I Yanlei, am of the Yen clan's bloodline. How dare you be impudent? Yanlei was shocked and furious. No one had ever treated him like this, especially supreme divas. By contrast, Yanlei was actually not afraid of the supreme divas. After all, he had the bloodline of the Yen clan, which was the true bloodline of a progenitor. It still held a certain degree of deterrence. But now, he was actually trapped by the people from the Sky Prison Valley. Naturally, he was very indignant. Yen clan's bloodline? Diva Yanlei. Can you even be considered to belong to the Yen clan's bloodline? There are countless Yen clan's bloodlines like yours on the entire progenitor continent. They are innumerable as sand in an eternal river. Why would the Yen clan care about you? Even if the Yen clan doesn't care about me, do they not care about Yuner? He has the strength of a peak title diva as soon as he was born. It's just a rumor. It's impossible for the Yen clan to absorb Yen Yun as a true descendant of the clan just for a bit of rumor. Don't waste your effort. This is an order personally issued by Diva Warden. No one can disobey it. The 7 top-notch title divas all wore strange masks, and their bodies emitted an evil aura of slaughter, surrounding the 3 of them. Even Diva Blackrock, who had always been fearless, wore a faint solemn expression on his face. Facing these 7 people, Diva Blackrock actually did not have any confidence at all. It was even more dangerous than when he faced the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva back then. Diva Yen Yun, come with us. At this moment, everyone looked at Yen Yun, waiting for his answer. If he did not obey, these 7 people would probably immediately kill him, and the entire Yen Lei city would be razed to the ground. Diva Warden was high and mighty, and was a supreme diva. Very few people did not give him face. Eradicating a mere faction in Yen Lei City was nothing. If Diva Warden was not powerful, how could the Sky Prison Valley which he established and where so many powerful divas were imprisoned exist until now? Diva Warden sent you to your deaths? I'll give you a chance now. Hurry up and return to the Sky Prison Valley and tell the Diva Warden. I'll go to the Sky Prison Valley myself soon and test the weight of a supreme diva like him. Let's see if he's as powerful as the legends say. Yen Yun stood with his hands behind his back. He still had the appearance of an adolescent diva, yet he was saying such words, which felt laughable. However, the 7 peak title divas could not find it in themselves to laugh. Anyone who disrespects Diva Warden shall be killed without mercy. The 7 peak title divas attacked. As soon as they attacked together. Diva Blackrock also suddenly gave a loud yell. His huge diva's true form appeared indomitable, ready to resist the attacks of the 7 divas. Crunch. However, in just an instant, Diva Blackrock failed to hold out. Even his true form was torn apart, and a mighty force swept towards Lin Feng. That was truly the ultimate strike. Even the supreme divas definitely would not be indifferent when facing this strike. However, Lin Feng shook his head. Fire of Genesis. Boom. In the next moment, the diva's true form of Lin Feng appeared. The entire void seemed to shake. In the unseen world, wisps of flames descended. A faint golden light was vaguely discernible in the white flames. Lin Feng's gaze was cold. He looked at the 7 top-notch title divas as if they were dead. These 7 people were very, very powerful. They were almost the limit of what title divas could be. Unfortunately, this was a world that emphasized bloodlines and respected bloodlines. At this moment, Lin Feng's bloodline was the peak bloodline, the progenitor's bloodline. It was even very pure, second only to direct descendants of the progenitor's bloodline. Then, the outcome of the battle was destined from the beginning. No, this is the fire of Genesis. How can this be? The Yen clan's fire of Genesis. Impossible. Run. Once the fire of Genesis was used, it would make one truly invincible. Forget about mere title divas, even the supreme divas would have to retreat from the brunt of it. As Lin Feng unleashed his bloodline and used the fire of Genesis, the 7 peak divas were all incomparably terrified and fled one after another. However, before the fire of Genesis, even escaping was too much to hope for. In just an instant, without even the slightest ability to resist, the 7 peak title divas were burned to ashes by the fire of Genesis. Dead. The 7 peak title divas had died just like that, silently. This time, Yen Lei and Diva Blackrock both looked at Lin Feng in a daze. This was far more shocking than killing the 9 revolutions ravaging Diva the last time. These were divas of the Sky Prison Valley. We're in big trouble. Yen Lei took a deep breath. He knew that disaster was imminent, but he would not blame Lin Feng. If not for Lin Feng this time, they would be long dead. No one targeted by Diva Warden could escape. Yen Yun, the situation is not too good. You have caught Diva Warden's attention. No one he targets can escape. You'd better leave Yen Lei City quickly, and go to the ancestral land of the Yen clan to make a try. It's at the core of the Yen clan continent. the final destination of all the Yen clan bloodline divas. If you can display your talent and officially enter the Yen clan, you won't have to be afraid of Diva Warden anymore, Yanlei hurriedly said to Lin Feng. Even though he had doubts about Lin Feng, he did not want anything to happen to Lin Feng at this moment. Father, how likely is it that the Yen clan will accept me in their records? Yanlei was not clear either. The Yen clan was a family with the progenitor's bloodline. There was even the progenitor, Yen, presiding over it. There were actually rather few of those with the true bloodline of the Yen clan. Yanlei was not confident that Lin Feng could be included. Father, perhaps I'm a little weak now. If I can become a supreme diva, I believe the Flare clan will accept me. Lin Feng's words made Yanlei fall silent. Everyone knew that the stronger one was the better, but how could Lin Feng become a supreme diva in a short period of time? Father, I know you're worried about Diva Warden. However, you don't have to worry. Even if Diva Warden doesn't come looking for me, I'll still go to find him. Diva Warden has accumulated resources for countless years and has a deep foundation. There are things I need there. Whether I can become the Supreme Diva will depend on the accumulation of Diva Warden. Yanlei's eyes widened, as if he could not believe what Lin Feng had said. He'd consider it lucky if Diva Warden did not take the initiative to come looking for Lin Feng, but Lin Feng actually wanted to take the initiative to look for Diva Warden. That was the famous Diva Warden. Father, I'm going. Lin Feng had already made up his mind. He had already been born in advance. There was no point in continuing to stay in Yanlei City. He did not want to waste too much time in this small kiliocosm. Then, he would end things quickly, become a supreme diva as soon as possible, and find the kiliocosm core space. This was Lin Feng's greatest priority at the moment. Swoosh! Lin Feng's figure flashed and he transformed into a stream of light, disappearing completely. Yanlei and Diva Blackrock looked at each other. For some reason, although they suspected that Lin Feng was a reincarnated diva, when Lin Feng really left, Yanlei felt an empty sense of loss. This is the Sky Prison Valley? Lin Feng had already arrived at the periphery of the Sky Prison Valley. From afar, the periphery of the Sky Prison Valley looked like a huge cage. In reality, this was indeed a huge cage. Basically, all who entered the Sky Prison Valley could forget about ever leaving. How strong is a supreme diva? A sharp glint flashed across Lin Feng's eyes. In this small kiliocosm where bloodline was revered, it was actually not easy to cultivate. One had to rely on the bloodline in their body to improve rapidly. Lin Feng had always been refining the ancestral bloodline in his body, hoping to take another step forward and enter the ranks of the supreme divas. However, he realized that it did not seem to be of much use. This was because it took time, and a long time at that. Lin Feng could accelerate time, but even if he had comprehended the principle of space-time, it was impossible to accelerate time with nothing. In particular, since Lin Feng was a peak title diva himself, if he wanted to accelerate his cultivation in time, he would need a huge amount of energy. Where would the energy come from? Yanlei City definitely did not have such a huge accumulation of energy, and the divas of the Sky Prison Valley happened to arrive. Thus, the Sky Prison Valley became Lin Feng's target. And now, when Lin Feng saw the Sky Prison Valley, it did not disappoint him. Energy. A large amount of energy. There was simply infinite energy. He did not know what Diva Warden was studying by imprisoning these divas, but there was no doubt that an unimaginably massive amount of energy was accumulated in the Sky Prison Valley. But now, all this energy was going to benefit Lin Feng. Open! Lin Feng tore forcefully with both hands. Boom! The fire of Genesis was incomparably domineering and incinerated everything. Even though Lin Feng's flames could not be considered the true fire of Genesis yet, its power was very terrifying. It instantly tore a hole in the Sky Prison Valley, and Lin Feng entered it. Ha! In a magnificent palace in the Sky Prison Valley, the massive Diva Warden suddenly opened his eyes. Who is it? Diva Warden was shocked and furious. This was already the second time someone had forcefully broken into the Sky Prison Valley. The last time it was a supreme diva who was only slightly inferior to him. He had even broken into the Sky Prison Valley, allowing many divas he had imprisoned to escape. It had not been easy for Diva Warden to resolve the problem, and this was the second time. Who is it? Diva Warden was incomparably furious. His figure crossed over and came directly to the place where the Sky Prison Valley had been torn apart. He saw a young diva. He looked very juvenile, and even the aura on his body was only that of a titled diva. Who are you? Diva Warden frowned. Something was amiss. The stranger the situation, the more cautious he had to be. Who am I? Didn't Diva Warden just send people to find me? Why do you not know the answer now? The expression of Diva Warden changed, and he said in a low voice, "You're that rather miraculous Diva Yenyun?" "That's right." Lin Feng admitted it openly, while Diva Warden thought of many things. "Looks like you've already dealt with those 7 fools. Moreover, you actually tore apart my Sky Prison Valley. I've underestimated you. However, you should never have come directly to my Sky Prison Valley. Even a supreme demon would only die once they come to the Sky Prison Valley." Diva Warden's expression actually became a little sinister. When had a dignified and powerful supreme diva like him ever been attacked by a mere titled diva? In the Sky Prison Valley, Diva Warden had killed even supreme divas. "Oh? I don't think so." A strange smile gradually appeared on Lin Feng's lips. "Lend me your energy to help me break through. Speed up." In the next moment, a strange type of rules enveloped Lin Feng. At the same time, infinite energy in the entire Sky Prison Valley seemed to be attracted by Lin Feng, boring into his body in a frenzy. Lin Feng actually began to accelerate time and cultivate in front of Diva Warden. With the infinite energy accumulated in Diva Warden's Sky Prison Valley, he refined his bloodline and vaguely began to break through to the realm of supreme divas. "You're courting death." Diva Warden was enraged. This was treating him as if he was nothing. How could he tolerate this? Hence, in the next moment, Diva Warden mobilized the power of the entire Sky Prison Valley. It completely covered the void, transforming into a huge cage that descended from the sky. A cage, a huge cage. The Sky Prison Valley was a cage to begin with, but no one knew that apart from being a cage, the Sky Prison Valley was also a supreme treasure controlled by Diva Warden. Even a supreme diva would be suppressed and killed by him. Infinite pressure converged on Lin Feng. Diva Warden smiled sinisterly. "How can a mere titled diva like you know how powerful I am? I'm not afraid to tell you why there are so many divas imprisoned in the Sky Prison Valley. I am using them to study bloodlines. Moreover, all these years, I've been relying on them to strengthen the bloodline in my body. One day, I will definitely be able to strengthen my bloodline to the level of the progenitor's bloodline." Boom! Diva Warden took a step forward. Even the void seemed to be shaking. Infinite pressure piled on Lin Feng's body, crushing down like a mountain. "Ha ha ha! People like you who possess powerful bloodlines and extraordinary aptitude will never know how difficult it is for me to get to where I am today. I could not even become a diva in the past, and the bloodline in my body is extremely weak. However, I don't believe that I can never break through my shackles because of a weak bloodline. After so many years, my research has already reached a critical moment. Using infinite bloodlines to nurture my bloodline, as long as I'm given another billion years, I can even become a peak entity among the supreme divas. You came at the right time. The progenitor's bloodline in your body is very rich. I didn't expect there to be a progenitor bloodline descendant with such a rich bloodline, who isn't a proper member of the Yen clan at the same time. Fate has favored me. It's time for me to break through my shackles." Diva Warden seemed to have gone insane, but in reality, he was very confident that everything was under his control. Lin Feng looked at Diva Warden. He had to admit that he had indeed underestimated Diva Warden. He did not expect that this Diva Warden climbed up from the bottom step by step and actually took a new path. In a bloodline cultivation system, the bloodline was the key. Without a powerful bloodline, all efforts were futile. It was completely useless. No matter how hard one tried, it was useless. However, Diva Warden had broken this pattern. The bloodline of Diva Warden was very weak originally. Normally, the outside world also thought that although the bloodline of Diva Warden was weak, it should just be the bloodline of a distant branch. How could the bloodline of someone who could become a supreme diva be weak? But from the looks of it, the bloodline of Diva Warden was not just weak. It was simply weak to the extreme. Normally speaking, it would be difficult for him to even become a diva, let alone a titled diva or a supreme diva. Diva Warden studied bloodlines, and he studied them with all he had. He even set up the Sky Prison Valley by chance, imprisoning and suppressing countless divas. These divas all had one thing in common, and that was that their bloodline origins were not bad. Many divas did not know the goal of Diva Warden, and thought that Diva Warden was someone who's a mix of good and evil. Who would have thought that Diva Warden was using the bloodlines of these divas to study and enhance his own bloodline? Now, Diva Warden had even become a famed supreme diva. He even had a chance of advancing further and becoming a peak supreme diva. However, Diva Warden had encountered Lin Feng. He should never have provoked Lin Feng. Freeze space-time. Diva Warden mobilized the power of the entire Sky Prison Valley and unleashed a strike that was very terrifying even among the supreme divas. It was equivalent to a strike from a peak 2-star supremacy. However, such power was nothing in front of Lin Feng. Even if Lin Feng only descended with a portion of his soul, he possessed the principle of spacetime. He was almost invincible below the level of 3-star. Against Diva Warden, all he needed to do was freeze spacetime. The entire Sky Prison Valley, and even Diva Warden himself, was frozen at once. Time and space in this area were all frozen. Only Lin Feng could absorb a large amount of energy. Hence, from the beginning, Lin Feng had not taken Diva Warden seriously or treated him as a threat. This is the principle of spacetime. Lin Feng was also amazed. He had long comprehended the principle of spacetime. He knew that the principle of spacetime was the only eternal principle of rules in the myriad worlds, and contained eternal mysteries. Be it in the small kiliocosm or the medium kiliocosm, the principle of spacetime would be completely unaffected. Just like now, when Lin Feng froze spacetime directly in this small kiliocosm and unleashed the principle of spacetime, this small kiliocosm did not change at all. No one in the Sky Prison Valley could discover Lin Feng. The freezing of spacetime froze everything, and stopped everything. Even their thoughts stopped at the moment of freezing. Lin Feng could walk freely in the Sky Prison Valley. He manifested the diva's true form. Wisps of flames descended. It was the fire of Genesis, and appeared as if it was communicating with a certain void. However, even if the fire of Genesis descended, it was useless before Lin Feng's freezing of spacetime. Even the fire of Genesis was directly frozen. Kiliocosm core space. Lin Feng could sense that the distant space was the kiliocosm core space. However, in his current state, he could not find the exact location of the kiliocosm core space, nor could he enter it. He was not strong enough, and there was another very important point. He had yet to obtain the attention of this small kiliocosm. In every small kiliocosm, there were some life forms that were born favored and possessed great providence. Some called them the chosen one of the world, while others called them the chosen one of the epoch. These people could often turn misfortunes into blessings from the beginning. They would encounter all kinds of bizarre things, all kinds of threats and disasters, but they could still survive in adversity and grow rapidly. It was as if there was a propeller behind them, causing them to improve rapidly. This was the effect of providence. This was the favor of the small kiliocosm. However, the chosen one of the world, or the chosen one of the epoch, was not fixed. Lin Feng wanted to become the chosen one of the world or the epoch in this small kiliocosm, and gather the providence of the entire world. Only then could he find or even enter the kiliocosm core space, and have a chance to obtain a complete portion of small kiliocosm origin. Lin Feng had descended with his soul. Hadn't he put himself in danger as a dignified kiliocosm sovereign precisely for the sake of obtaining a complete portion of small kiliocosm origin? Of course, Lin Feng also had an advantage that other kiliocosm sovereigns could not compare to, and that was the principle of spacetime. He could use the principle of spacetime to become stronger in the shortest time possible, so that he would not really encounter danger in the small kiliocosm. But right now, Lin Feng was accelerating time. The bloodline power in his body was becoming stronger and stronger. It seemed like only a short period of time had passed, But in reality, using time acceleration, Lin Feng had already cultivated for hundreds or thousands of years. However, this was far from enough. The progenitor's bloodline was even harder to break through than Lin Feng had imagined. Fortunately, there was a large amount of energy in the Sky Prison Valley. Lin Feng could maintain time acceleration for a long time. As time went by, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, Lin Feng, who was maintaining time acceleration, had already cultivated for nearly 100,000 years. After such a long period of cultivation, he finally made a breakthrough in the progenitor's bloodline in his body. Crack. There was no knowing how much time had passed. Perhaps tens of thousands of years, perhaps 100,000 years. Lin Feng constantly accelerated time, using the principle of space-time to accelerate time in a frenzy. Only a few months had passed in the outside world, but in reality, he had already cultivated for more than 100,000 years. After 100,000 years, after expending a large amount of energy, there was finally a breakthrough in the Yen clan's bloodline in Lin Feng's body. This breakthrough was earth-shattering. Rumble. The void shook, and a large amount of flames poured down from the void. These flames were white-tinted gold, and they descended majestically, enveloping Lin Feng. The power on Lin Feng's body became stronger and stronger, and a huge phantom vaguely formed. Lin Feng could clearly sense that there seemed to be a huge and majestic figure stretching across this world in the distant void. The progenitor. That was progenitor Yen. However, this feeling disappeared in a flash. Immediately on the heels of it, the bloodline in Lin Feng's body began to metamorphose. The white flames slowly metamorphosed to become faint golden flames. The Supreme Diva. This was a Supreme Diva. At this moment, Lin Feng had become a Supreme Diva and finally broke through his shackles. He had only spent a few months. At least from the outside, he had only spent a few months. In reality, Lin Feng had spent 100,000 years making the progenitor's bloodline in his body undergo metamorphosis. Time acceleration also caused Lin Feng's appearance to grow rapidly from that of a youthful diva. He looked somewhat similar to Yen Lei, but there was an additional powerful aura. Supreme Diva. So this is what the Supreme Diva is like. Lin Feng sensed the progenitor's bloodline in his body carefully. In terms of strength alone, after he became a Supreme Diva, he was actually nothing much, just like ordinary Supreme Divas. However, if he used the fire of Genesis, things would be different. The strongest ability of the Yen clan's bloodline was the fire of Genesis. It was a power that could incinerate and destroy everything. Retrieve. Lin Feng glanced at the entire Sky Prison Valley, as well as Diva Warden and the others who had been frozen in spacetime. Now that the bloodline in Lin Feng's body had already undergone metamorphosis, there was no need to freeze Diva Warden anymore. Buzz. The entire Sky Prison Valley returned to its original state. Diva Warden was slightly stunned. He looked at Lin Feng in front of him. Although his aura was a little similar, he was still very different from before. You are Yen Yun. Why? Do you not recognize me? Diva Warden? Lin Feng's half-smile made Diva Warden's heart palpitate. Impossible. How did you become a Supreme Diva? Diva Warden could not believe his eyes. A Supreme Diva. Lin Feng had actually become a Supreme Diva. It had to be known that Lin Feng had been a titled diva previously. There was an insurmountable gap between titled divas and Supreme Divas. No matter how abnormally talented a diva was, it was impossible for them to break through in such a short period of time. In particular, even Lin Feng's appearance had changed. Even his aura had changed drastically. It was as if Lin Feng had cultivated for many years. Diva Warden's senses were not wrong. Lin Feng had indeed cultivated for many years. However, the principle of spacetime was too unfamiliar and distant to Diva Warden. He could not understand such a majestic power at all. Nothing is impossible. I did become a Supreme Diva. Diva Warden, haven't you always wanted to obtain a powerful bloodline? Today, I'll show you the power of the strongest progenitor's bloodline. A cold smile appeared on Lin Feng's lips. Then he only waved his hand gently. Boom! The fire of Genesis erupted, and golden flames filled the sky. The pale golden flames vaguely formed a huge palm that enveloped the entire Sky Prison Valley majestically. In particular, Diva Warden was madly suppressed by the fire of Genesis. Even without descending, it almost suffocated Diva Warden. This world specialized in cultivating bloodlines. Even though Lin Feng had just entered the realm of Supreme Diva, it was actually meaningless. This was because the bloodline in Lin Feng's body was the progenitor's bloodline. In fact, his progenitor's bloodline was very rich. He had become a Supreme Diva now because the metamorphosis of the bloodline in his body was no longer inferior to the direct descendants of progenitor. Hence, the power of the fire of Genesis erupting from the bloodline could be considered terrifying. It instantly reached the level of a peak Supreme Diva. Such an entity could deal with a mere Diva Warden with ease. Bang! Lin Feng slammed his palm down. Diva Warden did not even have the slightest ability to resist before he was enveloped by the fire of Genesis. I can't accept this. I've cultivated for countless years. I can't accept this. Diva Warden screamed wildly. However, under the fire of Genesis, in the blink of an eye, Diva Warden had been burned to ashes. A dignified Supreme Diva, the absolute ruler of a region of billions of miles in radius, had fallen easily at Lin Feng's hands, without any ability to resist. This was the fire of Genesis, and this was the progenitor's bloodline. Even though Lin Feng had just entered the realm of the Supreme Diva, and relied on the eruption of his bloodline to be comparable to a peak Supreme Diva, he instantly surpassed Diva Warden, who had cultivated and even studied bloodlines for countless years. Lin Feng looked at the empty void. Diva Warden was already dead, and the Sky Prison Valley was beginning to collapse. Crack. Spider web-like cracks began to appear densely in the void. Huh? The Sky Prison Valley is shattered. We're saved. Diva Warden is dead. Haha. Diva Warden is finally dead. Which great diva saved us? Diva Warden has done all kinds of evil and used us to study bloodlines. Now he's finally dead. Haha. This day has finally come. Countless divas in the Sky Prison Valley cried tears of joy, and many divas seemed to have gone insane. They had all suffered all kinds of torture in the Sky Prison Valley, and there was no hope day after day. Being studied by Diva Warden, they were already completely numb. Who would have thought that Diva Warden would actually fall one day? Even though a Supreme Diva had come to cause trouble last time and even fought with Diva Warden, he had only broken through a little of the Sky Prison Valley. To them, it was useless. Now that Diva Warden was dead, they were completely free. Swoosh! Countless divas fought to fly out of the Sky Prison Valley. As soon as they flew out, they saw Lin Feng. Sensing the terrifying aura emitted by Lin Feng, which was not inferior to Diva Warden at all, they already had a guess. Thank you for saving us, Diva. In the future, if the Great Diva has any orders, we will definitely repay you at any cost for saving us. Great Diva, can you tell us your honored name? Lin Feng glanced at these excited divas. There were many peak divas among them. All of them were overjoyed now. I am Diva Yen Yun. If you are really grateful to me, spread the news of all the evil deeds in the Sky Prison Valley. With that, Lin Feng's figure flashed and disappeared. If he wanted to become the chosen one of the world or the epic, he needed this fame. This was publicity. Sometimes, when one became powerful, they would naturally be favored by the small kiliocosm. Of course, Lin Feng did not place all his hopes on these divas. He left the Sky Prison Valley directly. This time, he had to head to the ancestral land of the Yen clan,